Today I want to talk about cutting the nut slots and starting the initial setup. Now, what I typically like to do is start at the nut, and then I do the neck relief, and then I work on the action, the string height, and make sure that's all good. And then finally, I will adjust the intonation and get that all set up. And then if I have to repeat anything, I will go ahead and do that too. Hi, I'm Kevin, and welcome to the channel. We are getting closer and closer to the end here. I want to spend a little time talking about the nut slots. Even though the Tusq come with pre-slots, you still really should do some adjustments on that. So enough of me yapping, let's get to it. There are a few tools that you're going to need for this. First thing we're going to do is put on a new set of strings. And I use the DR10 to 46s. And then a good straight edge. This is my notch straight edge that I got on Amazon, fairly cheap. And I really love it. It's great for the neck relief and any of that stuff. There's a string winder, but if you're using locking tuners, you really don't need it because you pull the strings tight anyway. But if you're using normal tuners, it does come in handy. You're also going to need a capo. This comes in handy on several different things that we need to do on the setup. You're also going to need a nice tuner. A lot of people frown on the clip-ons, but this is a strobe clip-on tuner, so it's super cool. I like it a lot, and it is very accurate. And obviously, it's always nice to keep a pair of dikes handy. They always can be used for something. And then we have the fret slot files. Now, this is probably the most expensive investment, but it's been the best investment. These 3 files will do all 6. If you look, there's the string gauge on one side, and then another string gauge on the other. So, basically, you have 2 strings per file, and they're super nice, man, and really easy to use, and it makes life a whole lot easier when you're trying to get these nut slots at the height that you want to have them at. Then we have a couple of feeler gauges. I have one at 10 thousandths and one at 20 thousandths. And this will come in handy for the nut slots too. I keep them out of the set just because it's easier for me to do that. I just take out the ones I use the most. Made a little like maintenance setup kit sort of thing, so I've got all the stuff I need right there. And then you want some sort of a neck rest. This was the first one I got. It was just a cheap cork neck rest from Amazon. It was really cheap, like I don't know, like $7 or something like that. I ended up trimming the sides down a little bit though to work with it better. And then this is the one I use now mostly, and all it is a rifle rest or a rifle shooting rest. I don't know the exact term for it, but it was really cheap too. And I just filled it with rice, I believe, dried rice, and I love it. It works great. It's really, really cool. I forgot to put in here too, you have to have a couple Allen wrenches. You're going to need your Allen wrench for the saddles and your Allen wrench for the truss rod. But let's get these strings on and get started on this whole thing. So once we get the strings on, I will tune it up to pitch and get everything right there. That way you got the correct tension and everything that you need to be able to see the correct height of the string. Now, even though these are Tusq nuts, they come pre-slotted, you still have to do some adjustments to it. I did a video a couple weeks back about fitting it into the actual nut slot, but this is going to be dialing in the string height on the nut slot. Now, so you're supposed to be able to take a little bit off the bottom to adjust the height since the slots are already there. But I find that whenever I do that, the channel that the nut slot gets cut into can sometimes be a little deeper or a little shallower. So what I tend to do is leave it a little bit high and not worry about that So I'm sure not to be too low on there. So then I will dial it in with the nut slot files and get it to exactly where I want it to be. And it seems to work out pretty good that way. And you really don't have to do much anyway. They're very close, you know. You just don't want to start sanding too much off the bottom, and then you won't be able to use it because they're already too short. As you can see, the nut fits very well in the slot there, but it is a little high. You can see that it's, but that's good because now we got room to work to get it to where we want it to go. So now we're ready to put the capo on the 3rd fret, and we're going to check the string height with the bottom of the string to the top of the 1st fret. Now, some guys like it really close. Other guys don't mind it so much. I'm kind of in the middle. A good rule of thumb is right around 20 thousandths. I take mine down to about 15, and that's a good place to start. So you take your feeler gauge and you measure the gap in between. And if your feeler gauge is rubbing, then you're good to go. But as you can see here, I have to take a little bit off, and not much at all, just a hair. Now, somehow I missed the low E string, so we're going to start with the A string here. But it's the same process through all 6 strings. You check your measurement, and then you loosen the string up. You take your fret file for the right gauge, and you file the nut down a little bit, and then you want to be careful not to take too much off, and then you tune it back up to pitch. And do the same thing. Put the capo on. Drop the feeler gauge down in there. And then if you like it, you leave it alone. If you want to take more off, then you just take more off. And you do this through all 6 strings. Now, you really want to take your time with this. And you also do not want to cut any of the steps out, because if you cut it too low, it's going to hit the 1st fret. And if you don't take enough off of it, then it's not going to be in tune. So you really want to take your time with this and go slow and just do it right and involve all the steps in the process. So that's what we do. We go through all 6 of the strings this way, as you can see, and then we get it where we want it. Also, when you touch the bottom of the string with the top of the feeler gauge, you'll feel it. It'll just be a little teeny tiny drag on it, and that's enough. That's good. But if you shoot for 20 thousandths, there's a little bit of wiggle room there. If you get a little bit too low or whatever, the farther you take it down, the more perfect you have to get it. So just go slow, take it easy. Also, try to get the fret file perpendicular with the neck as possible. I noticed mine was at a little bit of an angle, but I didn't have to take much off anyway. But you really want to get that straight, and especially if you're cutting a fresh nut from bone, it's got to be perfect then. So, and that takes years and years of cutting those nuts to get them that good. Also, if you're leaving the plastic nut in there, you can fine tune that too. So anytime you are building a kit guitar or a guitar or anything like that, upgrading the nut or whatever, you always want to check this in your setup, because it will really make a huge difference in the way the guitar feels. So on the high E string, I flipped it the other way just so that I didn't have to pull all the strings across. And we get it back up to tune, put the capo back on it, and now we're going to check the gap again. And I don't know if you remember what it looked like the first time, but as you can see, it looked like I barely took anything off, but now it's a lot closer, and it's much, much, much better. So even if you order a Tusq nut or a pre-slotted nut, it's always a good idea to go through this process just to make sure that it's dialed in as close as you can to get it. Plus, if you haven't done it before, it's good practice. You really want those awesome luthiers out there that have been doing this for years and years and years. They can cut a nut by hand in their sleep. You know what I mean? So it's really one of those things where it takes a long time to develop and to get the skills for. But, in today's day and age, we got a lot of ways that can help us get through the process and still have a great playable professional instrument. And the last video we'll do the rest of the setup, and then I'll make a full review on this whole thing. If you have any questions, comments, or anything, please feel free to leave them down below. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And yeah, if you want to follow along the playlist, it is live right now, but it'll be much better when it's, you know, all finished completely. So, but yeah, we're getting closer, and it's turning out to be a beautiful, beautiful guitar. So we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.